How's everybody doing today? Well, you're all pumped a second ago, so I don't know what the difference was between the data. This just shows you can't always believe data, because I said, how are you doing? Anyway, good. But you said pumped a second ago. I'll go with what we said in the data. I'm so excited to be here with you. I need to start a timer. I love talking about innovation in education. I would do it all day. It's a wind me up and watch me go subject. So I'm going to start a little timer here so I make sure we get to the other sessions as well. I am going to go like that, and my slides are going to appear. Yay, there we go. Okay, I'm really, really excited to be here. I'm incredibly grateful for Nessa and Dave and Luis and all of the people that pulled this together. I'm also excited to just be able to learn from you. And to be honest, I'm also a little bit nervous because I have two of my key mentors sitting right here in the front row looking at me, making sure I don't say anything that doesn't make any sense. Nigel Payne and Elliot Macy, who are people that I have followed and learned from for many, many years, and I'm very excited to have them here as well. Quickly, just a little bit about me. You heard my name is Richard Culatta. I am the CEO of an organization called ISTE. These are my kiddos. I grew up on a boat when I was a kid. My mom taught on a boat for a program called Semester at Sea. She was a professor, and I just was a staff brat running around on the boat. I was the Chief Innovation Officer for the state of Rhode Island. Wait, there's little hearts that come up? How did that happen? Somebody do that again. That was really cool. Oh my gosh, this is, yeah, yes, this is going to be fun, you guys. I served for a while as the Chief Innovation Officer for the state of Rhode Island, a little state just above New York City, and had the opportunity to serve as the head of digital learning technologies for the White House. Under the Obama administration. I have a picture of me with the president, but I actually thought this one with me with the Lego dude on the south lawn of the White House was more impressive, so we went with that one. And then most recently, I've written a book called Digital for Good, which is really helping set conditions, healthy conditions for kids using technology in really meaningful ways. So particularly if you're a parent and have kids and you're trying to figure out where the right boundaries are, banning all access to technology, as a little hint, is not the right approach. Unfettered full access is also not the right approach, and so I try to give some strategies in here that could be helpful to you. And as I mentioned, this is the organization that I lead, the International Society for Technology and Education. How many of you have heard of ISTE before? Anybody heard of ISTE before? Yeah, okay, awesome. One of the things that we're known for is we have something called the ISTE certification for educators around the world to be able to demonstrate their ability to use technology in really transformational ways. Okay, enough about me. Let's talk about who is here. And I'd love for you to just start. We don't have time, as we saw with the intros, we don't have time to go around and have everybody share everything. But just by raise of hands, will you let me know if you are, excuse me one second. There we go. Now I can see the slides. If you are here in an elementary, secondary role, if you work in a school teaching young humans, raise your hand. Yep, awesome. Got a few of you here. Great to see. If you are in further education, higher education space, university, institution of higher learning, yep, raise your hand. Awesome, thank you. If you are doing adult learning, workplace learning, working with people, adults in the workplace of some sort, yep, great. If you are building tools or apps, if you're a solution provider, raise your hand. Great, what an awesome group of you. Okay, if you didn't raise your hand yet, raise your hand. Okay, there's a few of you that we'll catch. There's no category for you, so I love the fact that we have different groups here. This is one of the best parts of what Learnovation is, what Learnovate does, is bringing people together across silos, which is critical for innovation. The topic that I want to talk about today is, why does it feel hard to innovate in learning? Doesn't it feel hard sometimes? Do you ever talk to a colleague that works in another industry and you're like, why does it feel harder for us to innovate in learning than it does in the travel industry or whatever aerospace, wherever else your colleague is working? Have you felt that? There's some reasons why that's really true. It's not just that you're not just feeling it, is true. And I want to talk about some of the reasons and some suggestions for how we can make it easier to innovate in learning. By the way, I like to use AI-generated images, and I always put the generator and the prompt that I used on any image, because I think one of the key things that we need to do as learning leaders is model and share what prompts we're using. So you'll see the generator and the prompt that I use, just as a way to share what I'm using AI for. All right, let's talk about this for a second. What is innovation? Seems a little bit obvious asking this question at an innovation event, but I find that a lot of people, we haven't talked about what it really is, right? So what is innovation? Is it just doing something kind of crazy, right, out of the ordinary? Is this innovation? I don't know. This just looks dangerous to me. You know, is it using a lot of Post-it notes, putting Post-it notes, writing in markers on your window, right? Is that innovation? What is innovation? And so this is a question that I think is worth asking for a second. If I were to just say, what is innovation? What would be a word or two that you would say? If you were going to explain it to me, somebody just yell it out. What's innovation?
Change.
Change? Trying something new? With added value. Thank you for saying that. That's a really important one because this is new. I don't know that it adds much value, right? So let me share with you a definition that I use, my working definition. I'm not saying this is right. I'm not saying it's the one you have to use. But for my comments for the next little bit, it's helpful to have a common definition of what innovation is. We throw that word out a lot, and we don't often define it. So here we go. I believe that innovation, so if you look at this is the only business chart you're going to see in my whole presentation here. But if we have on the bottom here scale and impact, right? And this is baseline. Baseline is our current practice and what we're currently doing today, our current approach, okay? And then when we take something and we can move it to scale, right? Get a lot of people to adopt it, that's what I would call a trend. And you see that with a lot of, I talked to a lot of people that have built apps. You know, we have 10 million learners using this app. Really? Does it work? No, but we have 10 million learners using it. Great. So that's scale. On this side, we have impact. And we also see things that go to great impact, but don't necessarily reach scale. I get that a lot when I'm talking to our friends who are researchers at universities, right? I have found out how I can get every student on the planet to get 3 years progress in math in 4 days. Wow, that's great. How many students have actually done it? Well, 4 that are in my study. Okay, well, what if I did it with more? Well, you can't do it with more. I can only do it with these 4 because I have to talk to them directly all day, every day, right? So that's a great invention, really awesome, but not something that goes to scale. The magic part here is this part here. If we can get something that can dramatically improve on the current approach, the baseline, and be taken to scale, that's what I would consider innovation. Okay, that's my working definition. Again, product, process, strategy, approach that improves significantly on the status quo and reaches scale. Cool? So that's the working definition that we'll use. Now, I have some good news for you, because we love good news. Good news is that we are in a moment that is particularly optimal for innovation in the learning space. Probably the best moment that has ever existed up till this point and maybe will for a very long time. And I'm going to try to explain why in a series of some very complex data charts that I've created. So hang with me here. This is my graphical description of innovation in learning for the last 50 years. Okay? It's kind of been up and down a little bit, but you know, basically kind of going along, right? And then we had something called COVID. And it blew everything up, right? Everything that we knew was blown up, and there was all kinds of changes that were happening all the time, and it wasn't exactly an environment that we necessarily wanted. But here's the thing that we've seen is now post-COVID, we are not going back to what we had before. And we will never go back to what we had before, but we also won't live in chaos world either. And we have this moment to be able to reset and redefine what learning looks like in this new world. And this is a trend that you see over and over again, by the way. So one of the things if you look historically, we know that innovation always blooms after moments of disruption. Right? So you have big disruption, and we see big blooms of innovation. That is consistent. We see that over and over again throughout history. And so we are really lucky that we are in this moment of this transition between the two of what the future of learning will look like. And then combine that with the fact that we now have some access to new technologies that we've never had before. Those two things, the fact that we are coming out of this moment of major disruption, global disruption, and have access to new tools that we've never seen before, tee up a perfect storm for some really accelerated innovation in ways that we have never seen. But, and now I said I was going to say good news, and now I'm all of a sudden gonna bring in the rain cloud here. Just having the conditions be set right does not mean that innovation will happen. The conditions are set, but we have to be able to take advantage of those conditions. It would be totally possible for those conditions to be optimal for innovating and learning, and for us to not take advantage of that moment and keep on moving along like we always have been. And so we need to take a second here to make sure that we are recognizing and identifying some of the reasons, some of the pitfalls to learning. Anybody recognize what this is? Do you have the screenshot? Thank you, Atari. Anybody else get that one? Yeah, I just did an age check here for everybody. Thank you. So this is the game Pitfall, if anybody ever played it. So I want to share a couple pitfalls. I'm going to share 5 pitfalls that we see in innovation and learning, and I'm going to offer an antidote for each of those 5 pitfalls, okay? So here we go. First one, not deeply understanding the needs of the users. And I'm going to use the term users because I base all of my work around usability and user experience. And so that's the term we use. Whether your user is a student, whether it's a teacher, whether it's an adult learner, that's who we're talking about here. So that's the first one, not understanding the needs of the users. This is particularly challenging in learning because it's something we've all done. Right? You don't find this in aerospace because not all of us have been an astronaut, right? But in learning, we've all been through learning. So we all have been there. And so we run the risk of saying, well, we know what that's like. We know what learners need. We've been in a class before and we know what we would have wanted, and therefore we assume that that's what the learner actually needs. The antidote for this one is to spend a lot of time really prioritizing building empathy with your users. If you're building a new ed tech product, if you're designing learning courses or certification experiences, really build empathy for your learners. How do you build empathy? There's a bunch of ways to do it. For today, given the time that we have, I'm just going to share one, and that is something that I call user shadowing. One of the things that we do in my organization is once a year, we shut down the whole building. All of us, all 200 of us, go out and shadow an educator. We follow an educator through their learning experience, through their day. We don't try to be their mentor. We don't try to coach them. We just follow them through, and we observe what does it feel like to go through a day in their shoes. You can do this to students. You can do it to teachers. You can do it to anybody. And it's fascinating what you learn. We've done this with school leaders, and they'll come out and say, in 20 years of being a school leader, I learned more in this one day by shadowing a student than I have in my whole career about what the learning experience is. Right? We learned that our kids wait online too much, that they don't get attention from adults enough. It's very powerful to spend that moment and really deeply shadow and understand your users. Now, I've done this in all kinds of environments. Here's one. So when I was the Chief Innovation Officer for the state of Rhode Island, we were working with, we're designing a better public transportation system, right? We're trying to build transportation. But what we realized was that all the people that were in charge of our public transportation system drove to work. They weren't using the public transportation system. And so we decided, we hosted a meeting on one side of our offices right over here. So we hosted a meeting and we talked about how we were going to, be building empathy with users and understanding how this works. And then we said, now we're going to go all have lunch on the other side of town. But here's the catch. And the main city bus terminal was right by our offices. We said, here's the catch. In order to get there, you have to take public transportation to get to this place where we're having lunch. Go. So they all walked out. Now, what they didn't know is that we'd hidden photographers in the group of people at the bus terminal taking pictures of all these state leaders that were going through this process trying to buy a ticket to get on the bus. It turns out it was very complicated. It was hard to do. They're looking here trying to figure out how this machine works, which is very confusing. At one point, they had this sort of homeless guy walk up and go, hey, it looks like you need some help here. Can I help you? Because they couldn't figure out how to use the machine. This is our Chief Information Officer, our CIO, very excited that he finally got his ticket and then got on the wrong bus and went to the other side of town. So when they finally showed up, we had all these pictures streaming when they walked in, right? But it was this moment of building empathy. You realize, wow, these tools for finding how to get from one place to the other really stink, and we can do better. And we actually use this as a way to redesign our whole interface with our public transportation system. It starts by building empathy with our users. Okay, pitfall 2. Trying to solve too many problems at once. This is a particularly big one in learning because we have big hearts. If you're in learning, you're here because you have a big heart and you want to solve all the problems all the time. And you've seen this if you've ever been through a big system change, right? A big, if you're at an institution and you're working on a transition to a new LMS, right? And you say, hey, we're going to have this tool and it's going to hold all of our online courses. And all of our videos will be streamed from there. And all of our assessment and evaluation will be in this tool too. And it will translate it into 100 languages because we couldn't leave anybody. And all of our accessibility. You've been in these projects, right? Right, where you're like, just keep adding more functionality to this piece of software. We call this the boil the ocean approach, right? And usually the boil the ocean approach has a big ribbon cutting ceremony as part of it, right? Launching Learning XP 2000 double charged, right? We these big initiatives, big software launches, big program launches, and they often fail. And what you often see then is people say, see, you can't innovate in education. Nothing ever changes in learning. Well, the challenge is we often try to just do too much. And so the antidote for this one is embrace the MVP. MVP is a term that those of you that work in the software industry are familiar with. Minimal viable product. In learning, we often say, what's the most we can do? How can we help the most people all the time? But in software design, good software design, the question is, what's the least we can do that still adds value? What's the least we can do? And do that well, and then move on to the next thing. And that's the idea. And so it looks a little bit like this. This is the traditional approach, right? Where you take 1 year building the first module, second year building all of the course evaluations, third year building the tools and apps that it's going to be delivered in, and then by the fourth year, yay, we have a car. But it's never yay, we have a car. We end up having a car that doesn't work at the end of those 4 years, right? The wheels are square, and it doesn't actually drive the way we want it to because no user has actually used the thing for the last 4 years, right? This is the MVP approach. It means day one, we provide value. It might be a scooter, right? Then we add some steering, okay, not bad. And then we go, man, getting up hills really is hard, so we're going to add some bigger wheels and some gears, and then eventually a motor, and then eventually a car. But you see, from day one, we're adding value. It's a shift in how we have to think in learning. It means we have to not have to try to tackle, we can't tilt at all the windmills in one shot. Small bites, be able to learn along the way, and then you actually do end up with the vehicle at the end that really works because you've learned along the way what the users need. Now, you've all seen this, I hope. I've seen lots of great examples of MVPs, minimal viable product. Maybe not the perfect thing, but it gets the job done. I was at a school once, and they were trying to do a ping pong tournament, and the net didn't come in on time, and so we made an MVP ping pong net. It was great. I was watching somebody. And once you start watching for these things, you see them everywhere. I was watching somebody the other day that was cooking, and she was spilling the ingredients on her cookbook as she was cooking, and so she created MVP recipe holder, which I thought was really brilliant. And one of my favorites is this one here. You know when you're watching a video and you're trying to relax and your arms just can't hold up your phone any longer. And so I love this MVP phone holder. So there are lots of examples of what MVPs look like in learning. I'll share some if people want later. I do just want to quickly give you my highly patented approach to helping you figure out how to MVP. Because it's easy to say, but then you get into a meeting in somewhere and all of a sudden we're getting projects that are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So here we go. This is the default. Boil the ocean. It's what we want to do. Solve all the problems for all the people all the time. And then one of the things that we can look at first is say, first of all, what are some things that could wait until the next iteration? This is key in learning. For MVP to work, we have to be willing to do lots of iterations. You do a lot more iterations. Can we wait for some things for the next iteration, right? Great. And then the second question is, are there individuals who could be involved later, in a later phase? It's not that we don't appreciate all of the assessment team that's going to jump in now. It's not that we don't want the input of all of the 37 different languages that we support now. We're just saying, for right now, who must we involve in order to learn as we design our tool, our innovation? And who could be involved in phase 2? Do you see that language shift? It's not that we're leaving people behind. We would never do that in learning. We would never leave anybody behind, right? But we're just saying who could wait to be involved in phase 2. Those two shifts, deciding that we can have some elements that wait till the next iteration and some individuals that could be involved in phase 2 can help you scope down to a more reasonable MVP. Okay, and I can talk lots more about this later. I'll be around if people want more examples of this. But for time. I want to move on to our next thing. There we go. And MVP. Yay. Okay. Next pitfall. Pitfall number 3. This is a tough one. Holding on to what we currently do well. By the way, the reason I have the pencil here is because I call this the pencil sharpening pitfall. And what I mean by that is, if you say, I'm using a pencil and I'm writing, and it's becoming hard to write with because the pencil is getting dull. So what do? We sharpen the pencil, and all of a sudden, we can write better. Great. So then we become obsessed with pencil sharpening. We get the pencil really sharp. We can sharpen in between every word. We get a laser pencil sharpener, right? But no amount of sharpening the pencil is ever going to turn it into a pen or a word processor, right? Or Google Docs, right? There's no, and so it's tricky because we want to keep doing better at what we are doing, but if we are so focused on doing better at what we're doing, we can never jump to the next innovation. Here are 2 companies that you may have heard of. One is called Xerox. They used to have machines that we would use all the time to copy things. And then suddenly, somebody said, hey, you know what? I think what we're going to need is lots of small little machines so people can have copiers at their desk. And the people at Xerox said, you're crazy. Nobody does that. Copy machines are things that happen in big spaces by professionals. We are not going, and when they asked their users, here's the big thing, when they asked their users, what do you want? They said, we want bigger machines that are used by more professionals. And they said, yes, we will make them for you. And so off they went until all of a sudden they were gone and replaced by companies that made little copy machines that are now part of our printers at all of our desks. Here's another one. Do you remember these? How many have a zip drive somewhere? Yep, right? They were really good. Anybody have one now? Oh, look at you with your, man, you're awesome. Okay, so these are almost unheard of these days. Why? Because iOmega was so focused on sharpening the pencil of their zip drive that they missed what seemed like a super obvious shift to removable media, those little flash thumb drives that we all have now, made by all kinds of companies other than iOmega, right? Because they were sharpening the pencil. Let's just get better. And what did they do? They asked their users, what do you want? Do you want a removable? No, because you've already bought all of our iOmega drive, you want a better, bigger iOmega drive. And so that's what they optimized around doing until it was too late. And so the key here, as we think about this, is remember, and I love these 2 statements here. If you remember, Steve Jobs brilliantly said, people will know what they want when I show it to them, right? If he had asked people, what do they want on their phone? A bigger keyboard. Yep. They'll know when they show it to them. Here's the other famous one. You know why this one's here, right? Henry Ford, who famously said, if I ask people what they want, they will say, a faster horse, or that. So it's tricky. The antidote for this one is we have to be designing for future needs, which means, and this is tough, it means sometimes we have to not put so much attention on doing the thing we do well now. And that is really hard. We want to keep doing, but we can do better. And it's easier. Look, we could just make this a little bigger, right? And we have to be willing to move away from what we're currently doing in order to provide what our users need for the future. Because by the time they realize that they want the new thing, you don't have enough time to move with them. You can't wait for your users to want the thing that you know they will need. You have to start building that in advance in order to be innovative. In education, let me just show this real quick. We have this problem to solution conundrum, right? We have a problem and immediately we have the solution. Before you can even say what the problem is, I think what our students need, bam, we already have the solution. We already know what we're building. And we need to spend more time breaking that problem to solution cycle, that barrier. We need to say, here's a problem. Let's explore all of the wild possibilities. When Steve Jobs was looking at building the new phone, he wasn't just like, yes, let's just make new keyboards that are bigger on the phone, right? He said, let's explore. I don't know what else got explored. Could have been some amazing, I'm sure they were exploring and plugging things into your brain or carrier pigeons bringing information back and forth. I don't know, but you know that there was a whole bunch of explorations of wild things that happened before a solution came up that was much different than the immediate obvious one that would have been the pencil sharpening version of the solution. Clear? All right, let me keep moving on. Pitfall 4, waiting for all the data before starting. In case you can't read this in the back, it says, hello, I'm doing a community needs assessment. I love needs assessments. Could you spare 5 minutes to answer a few questions? No pressure. We're currently not funded beyond this survey, and nobody's likely to read the report anyway. So this idea of we have to do the needs assessments, right? Needs assessments are generally a dated approach to innovating. Not a horrible thing to do, but not going to be very helpful for innovating. If we think we can map out all of the plan and know what the future is before we get started, we end up with projects that are not very innovative. So the antidote for this one is what we call bias toward action. And then my AKA for this is where there's a will, there's a waiver, right? Where can we get permission to just get started? Because you learn so much more about what your final approach will be by just starting it. Start building, right? Some people call this ready, fire, aim. Have you heard that approach, right? Sometimes you just have to get going. And I promise you, I've done this hundreds of times. You will get so much farther down the road of knowing what you want by starting to build the thing than you will by planning it out on a whiteboard for 4 years and then finally writing the first bit of code without having some input. There's a little video that I use sometimes to help explain the concept of bias to action. So here we go. Also very highly technical. I hope you're okay with that. Well, this new policy, root cause analysis, change the culture, form a committee. There you go. Bias to action. Sometimes the best thing we can do is just get started, and that will inform what you're doing, your innovation, far more than if you plan for a long time. This is a story that I can share about this. I won't go into detail on it because for time. But we had a project when I was the chief innovation officer for Rhode Island, where we were trying to become the first state in the country to have computer science offered in every school. But the normal process would have been to get budget approved for it through the legislature, and then get a curriculum approved, and then do teacher training. And so we were looking like a super fast cycle would be like 3 years to get this done. And I said, we are not going to wait 3 years to do this. We have kids who literally need these skills today. So I took a map, a Google map of all the schools, and I just took all their geolocations. And you can make these. You know, you just go to Google and like import a spreadsheet with the addresses. Have you done that? Yeah, no, just make a map. So that's what we did. But then I color coded it with schools that were offering computer science, schools that were not, and yellow was ones that were getting ready to offer it. Okay, so here it is. So then we created a site that said computer science for all, right? And we went out and we did these town halls with families, and we talked about the importance of kids learning computer science, and we said, and we have this cool tool. You can look up and see what the computer science options are at your kid's school. Yay! And so they went in there, and they pulled this up, and they could see their school, see how most of them are red. Well, the one other thing that I did is when you click on the pin, it would pop up and give the principal's name and contact information. In 18 months, that's what the map looked like. Right? Bias to action. Just get started. We had a team, by the way, that was still planning the initial legislation that was going. We finished this before the official legislation ever even went to the state Senate and state Congress, right? It was done because we just started moving. And those are some of the strategies that we can do. And I can talk about a lot more of these if people want to do it. You do have to be willing to fail a bit. And you have to be comfortable that some things aren't going to work. But when you're using an MVP approach, it's okay. Because it's a small group of people that are testing. You haven't gone out with a big project that fails, micro fails, that then help you be able to learn and move faster. Okay, last one. And then I want to talk a little bit about AI, and then we'll wrap up. Number 5, prioritizing ownership over buy-in. I saved this one till the end because it's one of the hardest. And it's the one where if I haven't been booed out of the room yet, this might be the one that you boo me out of the room on. But it is really difficult. I have watched, unfortunately, many really great innovations die because it was more important that somebody had the credit for getting it done than got the innovation to succeed. We often think that the best idea wins. Do you ever hear that? The best idea wins. We say that. The best idea wins. That's a lie. The best idea doesn't win. We can think of tons of examples of that. How many people ever know what a Betamax videotape is, right? Best idea, better technology. Nobody used it, right? Gone. Best ideas don't win. The ideas that win are the ideas that get adopted. And so often we need to be willing to know when an innovation needs to be somebody else's idea. When I first moved to the Washington, D.C. area, and I was working in government for the first time, my mentor, a man named Jonathan Kays, came up to me once and he said, look, I'm going to tell you something. Best lesson you're ever going to know. He goes, you can get anything done in D.C. if you don't have to have the credit for it. I was like, okay. It's true. And what I would see is that if I needed to take an idea and I was smart enough, the best innovators that I know are the ones who know when it's time for an idea to be somebody else's. Here's what that looks like. Okay, and I'm going to kind of do it a little over the top here, just to make the point. So I'm here, and we're designing a new learning environment, right? A new learning program. Let's just call that a new certification. I go, hey, we need to do this certification, but I know that if I'm the one proposing it, it's not going to get the buy-in that I need from our IT team that has to sign off on it. Okay, so here's a way that I could do it. I could keep it in mind and just try to muscle my way through, and it'll never go anywhere. Or I could go, hey, I'm going to go over to my friend sitting right here, who's our head of IT, head of digital, and say, hey, we were talking about this idea, this certification. You were talking about how you wanted to help, really be moving some good ideas along. We need this program on certification, but I just don't know how we could do it. And she goes, well, I think there's this tool that I've been curious about. We might be able to, do it as part of this pilot. It's brilliant. That's really awesome. So then we have that little interaction. Now we're in a broader meeting, a staff meeting. I go, I was thinking about this problem we have, but tell me your name. Hi, Dash. And so but Dash, the other I was talking to Dash, remember you were talking about this tool that you wanted to propose for where we could do certifications? What was it? Right, and so I'm teeing her up to be able to share this thing. And all of a sudden, this is now her idea, right? But then I know that I got to get Nigel to sign off on it because he's over our quality control. And if he doesn't buy into this, we're out. And he doesn't like innovation. Right? So I go in and say, Nigel, you're always complaining about how we don't have enough data to validate whether our stuff is right. But if we use this digital tool, I think we might be able to get more data. What do you think? He's like, well, I would have to have this data, control trial, test time, t-test trial. Great, let's do it. So we talk about it. And so then when we're in the next meeting, we go, hey, and Nigel, remember this crazy idea that Dash had, right? You were talking about how it could help with our quality control. What was it? Tell me, what was how you were doing that? Well, t-test and try blah, blah, stuff that people don't understand, right? Great, Nigel, awesome. So between the two of you, do you see how I've done this? And again, I know I'm doing it over the top, but you're teeing this up to be other people's ideas. And then you get the buy-in that you need to make it happen. And it's an amazing thing to see, to watch this when people get it right. You can get people bought in to picking up and running with innovations. But it means you have to be willing to not have it be yours. Innovation is highly synonymous with humility. And there's no way around that. And if you're willing to be and want to be an innovator, you have to be willing to not have it be about you. So there you go. These are the 5 innovation mindsets. Build empathy with your users. Embrace the MVP. We've got to be comfortable with that. And you can't do one without the other, right? If we're building empathy, we've got to be willing to try out little bits of this and put it in front of them. Design for future needs, not sharpen the pencil now. Doing feedback, fill in the forms of how you like the course. All of that stuff helps you refine the current thing. That's pencil sharpening. That doesn't help you design for future needs. So we've got to be able to do that. Have a bias towards action. Just get started. You will learn far more about the problem that you're trying to solve by getting started than you will by doing a long needs assessment. And then finally, prioritizing buy-in over ownership. Okay. Now, we have a rule here, and this is part of any UNESCO country is required if you have more than 10 educators in a room for more than 10 minutes to talk about AI. So I'm going to use my last 10 minutes here to talk a little bit about AI and learning and make a couple invitations for you that I think are really critical. Now, first of all, before I say anything, you need to know I'm not an expert in AI. If anybody tells you they're an expert in AI, they're lying. Because, and I like this, cheetah, airplane, speed of light, people saying they're experts in AI. I literally have had people that talk to me and they're like, what is AI? And then I see like a website where they're like a consultant on AI. Come on! So nobody's experts in AI. We're all trying to figure this out. There's some really amazing things going on with AI that we see, tools that help recognize endangered species far better than the people that used to stand out in the field and ask the animals their names as they go by. There are projects that will help recreate your ancestors who passed away so they can give dating advice to your grandchildren. And in case any of this doesn't seem relevant to you, we have tools that make sure Wally is never lost again. I promise I didn't make this up. You can put any Where's Wally book in that little handle, drop down in 3 seconds or less and find Wally. But at the same time, in the learning space, we're looking at all these amazing innovations and we're asking questions like this: how do we stop cheating? I don't have time to go deep into this, but just take a look at this study from Stanford. It's based in the US, which I'm sure cheating is worse in the US. 70% of high school students rarely cheat, and guess what? That hasn't changed at all with the availability of AI tools. So yeah, do we care suddenly about cheating? Great, like I'm glad we suddenly care, but it didn't change, it's always been there. And so we need to be thinking about some better questions. And that's what I want to end with, is a handful of questions that I think are better for us to be asking. This is the most important one. What are uniquely human skills? We are used to asking comparing questions in other way. You know, what is the value of a dump truck versus a sports car? What are the uniquely useful skills of each of those tools? We're used to asking things like that. We're not used to asking what is the unique value of being human, because we've never had to justify being the intelligent ones in the room, right? When there was a decision that had to be made using human intelligence, it was us. Got it. No question. And so we haven't questioned what our skills are versus AI. You can have, you know, if I want to drive around and impress my friends, that's the vehicle that I want to use. Depending on who my friends are, that might be the vehicle I want to use. If I want to haul big boulders, that is not the vehicle I want to use. We need to be able to make that evaluation. And so when it comes to our own thinking, we need to know what are uniquely human skills. I don't think we know what they are. We haven't talked about it. What are uniquely human skills? We should talk about that more. Here are some: discernment, honesty, collaboration, critical thinking, leadership, curiosity. We can talk about more, but we need to know what uniquely human skills are in order to use AI effectively. And when we do know what uniquely human skills are, we can use AI to help us be better at being human. Understanding, I was at a UNESCO summit the other day, and the person before me got up on stage and said, understanding how to use AI will be a skill that will be required to survive in the same way that learning how to hunt was once required to survive. And I completely believe that. But we need to know what those skills are. We need to know what it means to. Now, there's a bunch. I'm not going to take the time to go through them now. I'm going to give you just a couple examples. And I'm actually going to go, I'm not even going to talk through these. I'm going to, you know, seeking feedback. Hard to get feedback from other people. Really easy to get feedback from AI. Visualizing ideas for things that haven't existed before. Really good skill for us to figure out how to do. Brainstorming. Do you know what? Humans are bad at brainstorming. We stink at it. I spent years trying to teach people to brainstorm, and we stink at it because we have context in our minds that make it hard for us to imagine something that doesn't exist. It's how we survive, by the way. It's not a bad thing. We survive because we have context that keeps us safe and alive, but it's really hard to brainstorm other things. You know what, AI? Really good at brainstorming. If I say, I want to bake these cookies, give me 3 different recipes that will bake these cookies, it will. If I say, give me 5, it will. If I say, give me 500, it will come up with 500 different options for making these cookies. We can learn how to use AI as a brainstorming partner. Summarizing information, another thing. Humans are bad at summarizing information. Our brains don't do it well. But we can go through and very quickly take lots of information. In this case, and I won't play the video right now, but in this case I took a very long article that I didn't read for a meeting that I was supposed to go into, and I dropped it into AI and said, make me a video of it. And it created a video of this, of a summary of this article. And then I said, well, make the video nicer and have it be a little friendlier, the person that's explaining it to me. This was in about 5 minutes. I did this whole thing. And so I had this whole article summarized by a friendly person who tells me, you know, what I need to know. I walk into the meeting. I was the only person, of course, who'd actually read it, because nobody else did. They didn't even pretend to, because I learned to use AI to summarize that information. And then finally, putting AI into role. Knowing that we can use these great things. There's these great things called prompt libraries. If you haven't seen prompt libraries, seriously check them out. Look at AI prompt libraries. This one is called moreusefulthings.com by my friend Ethan Mollick, and they are prompts specifically that put AI into a role as a mentor for students. So you can use AI. You don't have to use AI as a search engine. You can take prompts and you can say, for the next 8 questions that somebody asks you, I want you to not give the answer, but I want you to elicit feedback from them to see if they know the answer, right? You can program AI without any code by using prompts that help put AI into a role of a coach that can help support our learners. And so let me end now with the final thought, and that is we're in a very special moment, and we are in a moment that is ripe for innovation, because of coming after this big disruptive time in our history, and because of the availability of technology that is unbelievably powerful. The AI that we're using today is the worst version of AI we will ever see. Think about that. It's going to get far better. And so we have this confluence, this perfect storm of innovation. But we have to know what our uniquely human skills are. We have to know what we need to do well as humans, and then we have to be able to make sure our learners are learning how to use AI to help us fill in those gaps, help us be the better brainstormers and summarizers and visualizers that our human brain doesn't do well, so that we can focus on doing the thing that we do. And if we do it right, I believe and I know that AI can help us actually be better at being human. That's what we want to do. But if we don't get this right, and if we just get excited about all the tools and all the widgets and get very focused on the tool thing, we will, without even knowing it, replace the things that AI does really well. We'll be hauling around rocks in our Ferrari, right? Because we aren't thinking about what the uniquely human skills are and what the uniquely AI skills are that can help us. And that, my friends, is the job of learning leaders. That's your job, is to help make sure if we do AI right, learning leader fingerprints will be all over it. Because you'll be helping create a generation of young people, older people that are using AI to help them be better at being human. And if we do that, whew, man, the world is a great place. And we'll solve a lot of problems that should have been solved a long time ago. Thank you very much. Great to be with you this morning. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Richard, for being awesome. Thank you so much. It was really, really thought-provoking and a great way to start our conversation today. I'm not sure if we have time for questions. Anybody, anything burning that they'd like to ask Richard? We have a moment. Yeah, we do.
Oh,
if
sorry,
you, yeah.
I was off to get snacks, you know. Questions?
Yes, here in the front.
Then I'll wait.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What your recommendation would be for taking up all school community?
Yeah.
From the very afraid of AI,
Yeah.
parents in particular,
Yeah.
to this what we need to be in terms of it's going to be essential for the children.
Yeah. So this, just to repeat it. Yeah. Little minor question. What do I have? 30 seconds. How do we take a whole community, particularly parents and others, teachers, I'd put in there, and move them from being afraid of AI to all of a sudden something that we know that we all have to have, right? Yeah. Easy. Look, what I would say is using some of those approaches that I talked about with innovation are really critical. Minimal viable product. Think about some minor things that you can do. Don't try to overwhelm and solve all the problems. Just show some simple little ways that it can make their life easier. So first of all, you need to understand what I'm pointing it up here like it used to be here, where it said build empathy with the user. Understand what some of their challenges are. Parent challenges are. You'll never get them bought in by getting them excited about a tool that solves your problems. You have to find something that will help them. Now, it could be something as simple as this. Hey, you want an activity that helps your kid learn math better? Great, watch this. Go into AI, punch in, give me 4 activities that I can play with my kid in the car while I'm driving that teach dividing fractions. Bam, there's 30 of them right there, right? Something that meets their need, and that's it, right? That's a way to start buying them in, and then you take the next step. That's one. One other thing that I'll share on that one is model. Model. You notice every time I used an image, I put the prompt right there. It's not that I really care that you're going to use that exact prompt. It's that I want you to see modeling that almost all the images that I used came from AI. And so you're going to say, you're all highly innovative people. But for somebody who wasn't, they go, I never thought about using AI-generated images in my presentation. Cool, now I can, right? And so model the heck out of it yourself. And then find ways that help meet their needs.